More information and estimates, 808-635-8100 or visit KauaʻiMold.com.
Koloa Zipline is proud to support Kauaʻi Community Radio. Koloa Zipline.
Mahalos for supporting Kauaʻi Community Radio.
And it's a gorgeous day on Kauaʻi.
Fourth Monday of the month.
Fourth Monday of every month, PAL Radio Show. I'm the executive director for PAL, and my co-host is Jimmy Trujillo.
One of your houseketeers.
A houseketeer.
And it's about housing, but so much more.
About housing and so much more. PAL, Hawaii. PAL, Permanently Affordable Living Hawaii, really is, and so much more, living. Our mission at PAL is to establish a foundation of hope by providing affordable homes and services for the people of Hawaii. It's a nonprofit affordable housing provider, and we're based on the island of Kauaʻi. We provide services. We serve houseless and extremely low to middle income workforce households earning 50% and below area median income, and all the way up to 100% median income. And we're also developing properties for home ownership affordable. In Kilauea is our first one.
Making things happen.
Making things happen. So today I'm very excited to have a guest, Ka'aina Hall, our planning director.
And you did an interview earlier in the month, last week, Friday.
Yes, because he's a very busy gentleman, as you can imagine, and he made time for us, so I'm very glad we got to do the interview via YouTube, so that you will be able to see us on there. And Jimmy made a noble effort to get in there. Unfortunately, it didn't quite happen, but he made
the thought was there. The execution was poor, but
the intention was there.
And you know, just mahalo to you, and kind of for, you know, getting it together, talking stories. So we'll enjoy that for this part of the first segment of the 2-hour program, about 45 minutes of conversation between the two of you. What did you guys talk about?
Lots of in-depth questions, but I don't want to be redundant. Just listen in, because
There
he's
we
a
go.
wealth of information.
Spoiler alert, stay tuned. I do want to play one message now, and then that way we'll start in our radio show. So this message from the Kauaʻi Lifeguard Association about winter ocean safety. We'll play that right now, and then we'll get into our conversation, your interview with Planning Director Kaina Hall.
Aloha. As we move into the winter months here on Kauaʻi, our ocean can change quickly, sometimes from calm to dangerous in just moments. Powerful north and west swells bring strong rip currents, shifting sandbars, and heavy shore breaks. Beaches that seem calm at first glance can turn hazardous fast. Please be safe, swim at lifeguarded beaches, and use the buddy system. Check in with lifeguards for safety information before entering the water, and pay attention to posted warning signs. Even experienced ocean goers should know Hawaii has some of the most powerful surf in the world, shaped by deep ocean bottoms and steep shorelines. Our lifeguards are here for your safety, skilled, trained, and proud to serve our community. Please ask us for advice when visiting our beaches. One conversation could save a life. This has been a deep dive into water safety on KKCR with Ocean Safety Bureau's North Lieutenant Chad Listman. Mahalo and aloha.
Okay, good morning. Thank you so much, Kaina Hall, for joining us today on the PAL radio show. We will just jump right into it, and we really do appreciate you jumping in.
Thanks for having me.
And this today, I'm very excited about it, because this is exactly the kind of practical information that people need to know, and how county policy can actually help them create housing that serves local families. So we'll start right out. From the county's perspective, how serious is the housing affordability crisis on Kauaʻi right now? And where do guest houses and accessory units fit into the solution?
The affordability of housing is a dire crisis at this point. You have so many families that have over the past decade moved out of Hawaii, not really by choice, but because they haven't really been able to find housing that they can meet with their respective incomes. You see houses now going at the local market level of around $900,000, $1 million, $1.1 million for house and lot. And people just being priced out is a major concern for all of us in the county. And whether you're looking at infrastructure and increasing infrastructure capabilities, or you're looking at abilities for families to build additional units on their property, is where kind of the guest house and ARU policies kind of come into play.
Yeah, so it is a real crisis, no doubt. And some of these policies and things, I know, with the intention of making it easier. Oh, Jimmy just joined us. Hold on one second. Let me get him lined up. And we'll jump to the next. Aloha, Jimmy. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so the next big thing is new rules and also kind of some terminology. What actually is a guest house, and how is it different from an ADU, which is an additional dwelling unit, or an ARU, additional rental unit? What's the difference there with guest house?
Yeah, just over time, the county has increased the potential to build dwelling units within a particular lot of record. Standard density for residential development pursuant to zoning codes will be dictated by an R1, R2, R4 number. R1 essentially means you can have one house per 1 acre. R2 means you can build 2 homes per acre. R4 means you can build 4 homes per acre. There's a fair amount of R4 and R6 residential zoning on Kauaʻi, meaning you can have 4 houses per acre, or if you say have about 10,000 square feet, which is kind of a standard lot of record. 10,000 square feet is a quarter acre, so you can have 1 house on that lot within the R4 zoning district. What happened in the 1980s was the county recognized that it should possibly allow for these lots that qualify for just one house to be able to build an additional dwelling unit. Some refer to it as a ohana dwelling unit, but essentially the policy that was put in place in the 80s is for these lot owners to build a second unit, a dwelling unit. And that's been in play for now 30, 40 years almost, and is standardly used by homeowners. An ADU has no restrictions on it in that it can be rented out to anyone. It can be condominiumized or CPR'd and sold as well on the general market. And so that's been in play, again, for about 30 some odd years. Recently, or let's say not recently, but within the past 5 years, you've seen the county also add the potential to do guest houses or additional rental units. Now, back, when the ADU law was passed, you could also do a guest house. You have one guest house per lot of record or an ADU. And that's existed for a long time. But recognizing that, perhaps we want to allow for more potential to build smaller units, over the past 5 years, the county also added the potential to do additional rental units. And additional rental units goes beyond the ADU and beyond the R4, R2 regular dwelling density, and allows another unit to be built that does have some restrictions to really make sure it gets aimed at the local market for use. It can only be up to 800 square feet. It cannot be CPR'd off, though, so it can't be sold in the market a separate and apart from the main dwelling unit. You can attach an ARU to a dwelling unit, or you can have it detached. And so you can either have shared wall construction with the main dwelling unit, or you can detach it and have a separate ARU standalone by itself. And that ordinance was passed about 5 or 6 years ago. And after that bill was passed, there was some discussion, and this is all going on within the urban districts, I should say, of Kauaʻi. Right. So the town areas of like Lihue, Kalaheo, Waimea, all your relatively urban areas. It wasn't really allowed for agricultural lands to build these extra density units or extra dwelling units. And that's partly because the county has internal policies within its various planning documents that kind of try to push away from the suburbanization of agricultural lands and the pushing out of urban uses onto agricultural lands. There's an array of different reasons that those policies are in play, whether it's preserving open space, whether it's preserving agricultural lands, whether it's also speaking towards the efficiency, or should I say the inefficiency with infrastructure, sending more water lines and what have you out into the agriculture district. There's an array of different reasons that hasn't pushed, that the internal policies don't allow for further suburbanization. But after the ARU bills were passed in the urban district area, there were, and there remains to be considerable, discussion around, well, can't some, small nominal amount of these units be allowed within agriculture districts, particularly because you still have a lot of local families living in these agriculture districts that would like to create units for, children coming home from college, or, children even aging, that getting into the adult workforce population that can't really afford where the market is for single family dwellings, or for aging parents in Kapuna, or just for the regular rental market. And while the county has generally shied away from further suburbanization of these lands, given kind of the infrastructure crisis that we're all seeing, and the housing crisis is very much an infrastructure crisis, in that even if you can build extra units, in some areas there isn't enough water capacity, or in some areas there isn't enough wastewater sewer systems in play. And the fact that, these agricultural lands perhaps can accommodate individual wastewater systems, septic systems. The county did make a slight change in its analysis of agricultural lands, and about 2 or 3 years ago adopted a ability to have a guest house on agricultural lands associated with any dwelling unit. Previously, you could only have one guest house for the entire lot of record, and agricultural lands qualified for sometimes 3 or 4 farm dwellings with it, but only one guest house. And so, like I said, a few years ago, the county adjusted its policy to allow guest houses for every dwelling unit on agricultural land. And guest houses have pretty much the same restrictions as ARUs in that they can not be any larger than 800 square feet. They can be built standalone or attached to the main dwelling, but they also cannot be CPR'd off and sold separate and apart from the main dwellings associated with.
But it can have a kitchen, right? A kitchen is.
It can have a kitchen. Yep.
I mean, because there's an advantage there. You know, if you need workers on the land, and if an ag, that's ideal. But they're allowed one
guest house per dwelling unit.
Okay. Correct. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I think that makes it clear. So when people are looking at their own property, what determines what they are actually allowed to build, and what are the biggest misunderstandings that you see from the public about that?
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with a misunderstanding of what their property might qualify for.
Right.
And it's really, kind of simple. We've tried to simplify it as much as possible to determine whether or not you're qualified. You can literally log on to our website, and there's an ARU ADU guest house clearance form. And you can just literally fill out your tax map key and provide a plot plan depicting where you might want to put a guest house or ARU on your property. It doesn't have to be architecturally stamped, or you can hand draw it as long as it's to scale. And this clearance form will get routed to all of the infrastructure agencies. Because in most scenarios, if you have a dwelling unit, your property more than likely qualifies for an ARU or a guest house from a zoning perspective. But then you don't want to, look, I qualify zoning-wise, but you don't want to start going to the architect or draftsman to draft those plans, because they can have a cost associated with them. Right. But if you submit this clearance form, it will submit it to all the infrastructure agencies to make sure there's adequate infrastructure. Can you meet, whether it's a sewer system or if it's not sewered, do you have enough space to accommodate a second septic system? Is there water capacity via the water line in the area, and what have you? So we'll circulate it for free. It doesn't cost anything. We'll circulate your property clearance form between the respective agencies, and it takes about 30, 45 days for all the agencies to review it, and they get back on whether or not that site has adequate infrastructure. And if you do, then absolutely you're on your merry way to now going and getting actual architectural plans drawn up for it.
So it's like a
I recommend anybody interested in doing it, just even interested, to submitting a clearance form online and just seeing what infrastructure is available for you.
Right. It's like a pre-permit, which is good. And sounds quite user-friendly. And is there a cost with that to turn that in?
No, it's zero cost.
Oh, nice. So that's that's quite user-friendly. That's good. And then
and the last thing any applicant wants to hear is, wait, I got to fill out more paperwork with the county for a permit. And the first time I saw the concept, I was even like, wait, what? Like more paperwork? But then in understanding that, hey, sometimes architectural plans for an 800 square foot house can cost, the architect or draftsman can cost $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 or $10,000. You don't want to spend that money and then find out, oh wait, there's no water capacity there. So while it is an extra step, it's a step that I think protects the homeowner and builder from going down the path without realizing that they may not have infrastructure.
No, that's a good thing, because we know to embark on that, it definitely costs money, and that's user friendly. That's good news to hear. And then can these guest houses ever be used as vacation rentals?
No.
Okay, clearly. And we all understand the purpose of all that. So there's another thing with parking, because that could make or break a project, from what I understand. What are the current off-street parking requirements for guest houses? And do you think parking rules are sometimes a barrier to smaller housing options? Because like neighbors, you're building, and then all of a sudden, and then there's cars, and all of a sudden a street that was pretty quiet, all of a sudden has cars everywhere. So how does that factor in?
Yeah, the guest house and ARU both require a designated off-street parking stall for each ARU or for each guest house.
Mm-hmm.
For main dwellings, it's required to have 2 parking stalls, off-street parking stalls designated.
Mm-hmm.
They can serve as a barrier. Certainly, making sure that the streets aren't too congested, and the overall fabric of the community isn't disrupted. Philosophically, right? It's a conversation that needs to happen and has to happen, right? Like there are some like larger scale projects where there's a lot of pushback because there's not adequate enough parking or what have you, and there is that question of going on like how much are we as a community willing to potentially concede some of these areas around parking or other issues that are restrictive in order to get more shelters over families' heads, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not to say that we got to get rid of all parking requirements or that we have to have a whole lot more parking requirements, but it's an honest conversation that is to be had in that, you will see projects that reduce the amount of parking proposed in order to provide more units available to families to purchase or rent. And so it's not a discussion that's going to go and be resolved anytime soon, but I think we all have to be cognizant of that fact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's can be a dilemma because it increases density and everybody gets affected. But then again, we need housing, and the other thing that must be extremely complex is making the regulations and the rules and the bills and all that. But who's benefiting? And because I know the intention is to help the people of Kauaʻi, we know that. But there's always loopholes. There's always then, an unintended consequence that maybe it happens after the fact and we say, oh no, why do we do it that way? That's got to be very challenging because no matter what the bill is, no matter how good it sounds, there always seems to be a way of it to be taken advantage of, right?
Potentially, yeah.
And about that, what about if somebody just kind of goes rogue? They build what they want to build, and the planning department isn't know all, be all, see all, can't be. How does that? What happens there? No,
the planning department definitely has an enforcement part of our department, and it does investigate zoning violations. But our enforcement department, our division, I should say, isn't large enough to be roving around the island searching for violations. Right. There is one area of enforcement that we are actively looking and hunting, and that's on illegal vacation rentals. We do have a team of people that are actively searching the World Wide Web for illegal operations. We pair up directly with Airbnb and VRBO and Expedia, and they share data, and we work with them to shut down illegal vacation rentals. Mm-hmm. Outside of the illegal vacation rental market, we're not actively roving around looking for, illegal sheds or illegal dwelling units. That's a complaint-based program. And so if we do get a complaint, we do have to investigate it. If we do find violations of the zoning code, then we will, enforce upon it. But to kind of go back to the guest house and ARU policies, a lot of those, as being spun up, we're recognizing that you have a lot of families, right, converting garages or building extensions with an extra kitchen in it for other family members to live in because of the housing crisis. And so, we take no joy and pain in issuing a violation notice for, an illegal conversion that's serving housing purposes. And I several years ago, I got into a little bit of trouble because I pointed out the housing crisis is being met to a certain degree on Kauaʻi and other parts of the state through black market housing and referring to these illegal dwellings. And so people were like, we gotta stop calling these things black market housing, kind of. I wasn't trying to make it like it's an illicit housing. It's just that from an economist or an economic standpoint, black markets arise when government prevents a particular product from getting to its consumer. Mm-hmm. You have a black market drug trade because governments don't allow and prohibit methamphetamines from recreational use, right? That's a good law.
Right.
But if you have a black market housing situation, all I was trying to say was your government itself is preventing these dwelling units from getting to its consumers, the residents. Mm-hmm. And perhaps we need to begin to peel that back to allow for these families to bring their units into compliance. And so those area policies, those guest house policies are a recognition that some of these changes are already happening regardless, and government needs to at least facilitate it where we can and when we can, insofar as it's aimed at, resident and long-term housing. Mm-hmm. Certainly using these as illegal vacation rentals, we're going to come down hard on those. Mm-hmm. But absent that, being able to provide a bit more opportunities within the legal realm to apply for these units.
Right. And then, we know things are going on, and even people capitalize on the high rents right now and just make makeshift, live in a container. I'll charge you $1,200, $1,500 a month for that.
Yeah.
And if those things exist and it got reported, let's say, what consequences are there? The planning department isn't the police department. So, what? And it's a limited capacity of staff, obviously. So what happens?
Yeah, when you have people renting out containers and whatnot, if you qualify for another unit, be it an ARU or a guest house, right? There's us initiating that process. Is, look, you can actually convert this, or you can get this possibly permitted as an ARU, but then you also still have to go through your standard building permit. Mm-hmm. To make sure that the basic health and safety, facilities are there, right? Sometimes they may get stuck though, right? Sometimes applications where they're trying to remediate and bring it into compliance may have, right, some infrastructure issues. If it doesn't have access to a wastewater system or it doesn't have a septic system in it, then yeah, you got some environmental problems, and that's why these need to possibly not, mm-hmm. be continue in operation. But it's the first check of trying to, once again, bring them into compliance, but also making sure that the basic, sanitary needs and environmental needs are met.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of those loopholes is if it has wheels, people, right, that comes up about the wheels. If it has wheels, it should be fine.
For residential use, you ultimately got to take those things off the wheels. It's not an issue if you I should say if you are using a trailer home for residential purposes, there's no problem with that, but you got to make sure again you go through the proper health and living facility review, and so we have cited trailers being used for residential use, and some of them have gotten permits just by ultimately going through the building permit process to specifically be used for again, residential purposes. Mm-hmm.
But the one wheels, it's temporary then considered. It's not a permanent structure, is that?
If it's being used for what is clearly permanent occupancy, we have cited property owners for it.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned something about taking off the wheel requirement. What is that?
Mm-hmm. If you're going to use one of those trailers, there's something specific in our zoning code that trailers on wheels cannot be used for long-term residential use. Uh-huh. But by removing the wheels and the axle, and then affixing it to the ground and going through the building permit process to make sure that water and wastewater needs are met, you can get those permitted as residential structures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, lots of details to navigate through. And unfortunately, I think some people make a maneuver, they bring something in, and then they're, whoa, wait a minute, it's not even legal. And is it even allowed to ship over let's say a motorhome or a trailer or something to the county?
Mm-hmm. It is. There's nothing that the county can do that can prevent or prohibit the shipping in of motorhomes or vehicles that have sleeping quarters in them.
Right.
There's
I see
nothing really much
you're
we
holding
can.
your head because, I mean, it's very hard. It's like herding cats, I think, a little bit. You know, one cub comes up, another issue pops up, and then another problem is solved, and then another problem pops up.
I mean, it's an evolving market that we want to make sure is still meeting all the necessary requirements from a health and safety standpoint. You know, I even believe, like, with the whole discussion of prefab homes,
yes,
making sure that they meet our basic health and safety standards. And our building division has begun reviewing prefab homes. I believe they've found one or two that meet the building code requirements. I like, just a small story. There's a prefab designer that's beginning to ship homes over here without really checking to make sure it meets the code. And our building division kind of went in and looked at their factory and have to tell them, guys, you're using untreated wood. Your prefab home is going to start to, you know, it's not going to last.
Not in this
just
climate.
a couple of years within our elements. And so it's important to make sure they meet. It's not, you know, regulations just to serve as a barrier to entry. There's reasons there in play. But again, having the prefab folks check in with us ahead of time is prudent, and a few have, and I believe at least one has recently been permitted or been signaled that their prefabricated homes meet building code requirements.
Well, not that you're trying to promote any particular vendor's business, but I think the average person would kind of like to know that, so they can say, okay, I'd avoid all the headaches if I knew this was going to go right through permitting. So is there a way that any of the public could actually obtain an idea of where that is?
I'm trying to think of the vendor. I can't.
I mean, not that we're going to promote a particular.
No, I can't think of, and I don't believe they're selling their product here yet. They've been meeting with the county regulatory divisions to make sure they meet it, and that I was also saying is that I believe they've made it through the building review process, but I don't believe the product's here in Kauaʻi at this point. It was just a recent development I found out about a month or so ago.
Right, because there's been a lot of, you know, hype about, oh, this home, it's ready to go, 30,000, boom, it's yours. I mean, you know, and it's exciting, and someone can bring it, and then they can realize, okay, it's going to be completely, permanently illegal. You know, bummer. And on the trailers topic and motorhome topic, you know, we are in a hurricane zone. So how do we, I mean, so once the wheels are removed, that's the whole point, is to then get it hurricane tie downs and make sure it meets the counties. That's probably the reasoning behind it, right?
Partly,
yeah, part of it and more probably. Well, can you explain in plain language, now we'll kind of change a little bit here, about the special management area, and what is it, and how is it being in the SMA or special management area changes the picture for someone who wants to add a unit, let's say nearer the shoreline. Plain language, please.
The special management area refers to a coastal zone designation that each of the islands have that just highlight areas of land around Kauaʻi that have impacts on the coastal area or can be impacted by it. It's certainly a much more scrutinous process, permitting wise. I once had to speak on a panel where the question was, how do we make it easier to develop in the special management area? And the panelists all went down saying, you know, here's how we could free up this, or here's how we could do this. And my response was, and still remains to be, if you want a less scrutinous process, don't develop in the coastal area. Like, coastal areas shouldn't be easier to develop in, from an array of different reasons, from environmental to the place in Hawaii's culture, the place in Hawaii's, you know, even you talk about recreation and tourism, like it's there's all types of reasons you really shouldn't be developing in that area if you want an easy process. And for the most part, right, the vast majority, not all, but the vast majority of our coastal areas is primarily at this point transient oriented to a certain degree, as far as the urban areas are resort areas. And then from a global speculative market, we can't prevent people from buying land in Hawaii. We just constitutionally, it's not quiver of tools. And so from a global speculative market, it's where a lot of the speculative dollars go. So we're not trying to look at how you increase the potential for more global speculation in Hawaii.
Right.
So I don't know. Do you want to put an extra unit? There are some, parts of our code that do allow dwelling units in the coastal area, but the ARU provisions are to a certain degree somewhat outside of the special management area. Some of the guest houses, yes, I mean, you can build in the coastal area, but we're not going to make it easier. Honestly, that's not to say that you do, because I think there was a Habitat for Humanity did a project within the special management area a few years ago. They got permits for that, but they haven't built yet because they've come across some archaeological issues, which that also exists in our coastal area, and so they too are running up to potential issues when building the coastline.
Well, now that you brought it up about the iwikupuna, so when you're doing this permit, for example, the one where the pre-permit actually is, that part isn't factored in, and so because there's not an so if someone is embarking on a project, is it recommended that they do the archaeological study first, or because that can hold up a project for a long time?
Yeah, if you're in a coast area, you really should be doing archaeological assessments ahead of time. If you're in like a sandy, your shoreline abutting, 100%, you should be doing all of your archaeological work first. I don't think there's many local families looking to put ARUs in guest houses for their own familiar use in the shoreline. So I don't think it's a problem many local families are going to face. But if anybody's doing any work in a coastal abutting property, you really should be doing, among other things, from cultural impacts to archaeological assessments ahead of time.
And then that process, how would one approach that process? Some people don't know. There's a lot of things people don't necessarily know.
You're listening to KKCR, and we have Ka'aina Hall, our Kauaʻi Planning Director, doing an interview and sharing lots of information about what we need to know about building and rules and regulations. We'll take a short break right now.
Aloha mai kākou. Today's Hawaiian word of the day is kai o kia. Kai o kia is defined as separated by sea, spared, or set apart. Ua kauoha o pele I ke kanawai kai o kia, maluna o kanalu o puna. Pele ordered the kanawai kai o kia over the waves at Puna. Again, today's Hawaiian word of the day is kai o kia, or more formally, kanawai kai o kia, the edict to set apart or restrict access to the sea.
KKCR's Hawaiian Word of the Day is brought to you by the Ama Olukai Foundation.
Did you know that no matter where you are on Kauaʻi, when you throw something in the trash, it ends up in Keikaha? That's because Kauai's only landfill is located on the west side. The Keikaha landfill receives 260 tons of trash every single day, and in just a few years' time, it will run out of space. By the year 2030, Kauai's only landfill is expected to reach full capacity, leaving us with nowhere to put our waste. While the county thinks of our next landfill solution, it's important to be mindful of what we throw away. 45% of what enters the landfill doesn't have to be there. It can be composted, recycled, repaired, or repurposed. Kauaʻi has tons of great resources for putting waste in the right place, like recycling centers, composting services, repair fairs, thrift stores, and more. Responsible waste management is not just how we extend the life of our landfill. It's also how we care for our communities, care for the land, and care for the generations to come. For a full roundup of resources for diverting waste, visit kkcr.org/onair/Opala. This message is made possible by funding from the County of Kauai's Office of Economic Development.
The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speaker and do not necessarily represent those of KKCR, its management, staff, or underwriters.
And we'll rejoin the conversation with Leilani Spencer and Kaina Hall, who's the planning director of the County of Kauaʻi. And that interview was Friday morning. And here we go, back to that conversation.
Is that a expensive or cumbersome or time-consuming endeavor to get the archaeological?
To get the archaeological work can be costly. You definitely have to hire a firm or someone with professional expertise to do the archaeological work. Mm-hmm. If you are on, like, say, a sandy shoreline and you're adjacent to it, yeah, you're going to spend probably a year or more getting your archaeological ducks in a row, if you will, if you're even able to. And then you also have to go through the State Historic Preservation Review Commission, which can be a timely or a lengthy review depending upon the project. Each one's kind of case specific.
Mm-hmm. Because if they skip that, or I mean, who knows if they can say it's likely to be an area that's impacted mostly, so that the person, I guess, could have heads up to what to maybe expect. Mm-hmm. Because if it does occur, then everything stops, is what my understanding is. That's the way it works. You have to stop everything. And especially now with the conversions of the septic, and there's so many traditional homes that are on cesspool.
Yeah, that's definitely an area that's running into, if you're going to build something in the future on the shoreline, 100%, you need to be doing all that site assessment ahead of time. I think right now, State Historic Preservation Division in certain sandy areas that have a high potential of having EV or other archaeological on site, they're just requiring a full 100%. Like, you got to trench and dig out that site with an archaeologist on site to do a pre-screening before you even get your permits. So it's going to take a while. It's a long way of saying, like,
it's a deep topic. Okay.
Oh, sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. What I meant to go into is for new developments where you're seeing this kind of conflict arise. To your point, Milani, is on the septic conversion, right? We all know septic conversions are a good thing, especially in coastal areas and the impact cesspools are having in coastal areas. So you have some people attempting to try to convert their cesspool, but going through the historic process can be very timely and very cumbersome, and is almost now to a certain degree pushing some of the motivation to do septic conversions aside now, where some folks are just saying, if they're on the coastline, I want to do a septic conversion, but I'm not going to, just because of how potentially conflicting it can be, and that's not a good thing either.
No, it's a dilemma again, because they'd be out of compliance with respect to making it better and getting rid of the cesspool, but then the risk, it's a big risk to a private individual who's maybe has a house that is close by, and there's so many on the North Shore, especially, and all along, even in Kauaʻi, I would imagine there are plenty.
No, absolutely.
So that's another big stumbling block. But I guess, when is the date? By 2050, isn't it? 2050
is the state deadline for septic conversions for all cesspools.
Mm-hmm. And by 2050, can you imagine how much that conversion would end up costing?
Yeah.
I mean, there was a day when it was 20,000, and now it's gone up to like 50, 70,000. And how can it? Yeah, and that impacts everybody, including a lot of people who are considering purchasing and don't know anything about this. Hopefully,
and septic systems are just costly in and of themselves. Mm-hmm. In the coastline, they're even much more costly in the way that they have to set up the engineering, which is just another reason we really shouldn't be building in the coastline.
No, agreed. Well, the answer is in the name, special management area. I mean, what does that mean, right? Well, so beyond the housing, what are the real infrastructure gatekeepers that stops a project? Well, we talked about it. The EV, for sure, but potentially water availability. How is that determined? Because water is kind of a quasi-independent agency, So how does that get determined?
The water department will review each application independently to determine
in that pre-permitting.
That the pre-permit, they are on the going back to the ARU guest house clearance form. They are on that clearance form. They're reviewing it. It's in particular the water department. I think a lot of potential applicants are looking at to try and see what's water going to say on that clearance form.
That's good, because that could be another major headache. And then about flood risk, how are flood risk, tsunami evacuation zones, and sea level rise affecting where housing can go and how the county thinks about long-term planning? So I know, the tsunami, all of that's a factor, and it has to be stated. Is it a flood zone? So can you comment on that?
Yeah, the tsunami evacuation zone did definitely play a role in the ARU guest house policies, in that looking in particular at ARUs, there were some North Shore community concerns about increasing the amount of habitable units beyond the Hanalei Bridge, because it is an evacuation zone, yet the bridges have limited capacity as far as getting people out quickly.
Right.
So ARUs actually aren't allowed past the Hanalei Bridge from an evacuation management standpoint. From the floodplain as well as sea level rise, you really shouldn't be building in floodable areas or places that are going to be subject to sea level rise in the future. But the policies of the county right now reflect that some properties that are entirely within these areas, and so we need to allow for some construction to happen. And so from a floodplain management, from a sea level rise standpoint, let me take a step back. From the coastal area with sea level rise, the county has some robust shoreline setback requirements. It has one of the most robust shoreline setback, in that it pushes the built environment away from the shoreline for future built environment development, that is. So it pushes it way back, but then for future sea level rise flooding, where the waters are temporal, like high wave run up, the policy requires that the homeowner elevate their structure to accommodate, whether it's precipitation water from a floodplain management or riverine management, to sea level rise as well. That might be the type of sea level rise that is temporal in nature. You have the shoreline that will move, but then you have high waves that also increase. So some of that water can be accommodated through elevation.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're talking about tsunami zone, flood zone, sea level rise, and about you stated you ought not to be building in that area, but those of us who are on Kuhio Highway, passing Ku'umo'o and seeing in between, Hale'ilio and Ku'umo'o, I mean, there's a big old dust screen up there, and it kind of comes up in every show pretty much about Kokomo. What about why on earth would that be allowed to go forward, or is it being allowed to? Where are we at with that? Because that to me is glaring. The ingress is Ku'umo'o Road, the exit is out Hale'ilio, and so goodness, if there's a terrible evacuation problem happening, the people in
trying to get it rebuilt.
right.
And segueing off of the early 2000s, that coalition was still very active, and they went for permits to rebuild it. And the planning commission at the time with a fair amount of community support as well as council support at the time. Because there was this whole thing about rolling away the Iniki ordinance. And even council was like, no, let's keep it a little bit longer so we can get cocoa palms back. So there was broad amount of community support back in the early to mid 2000s. And those permits were granted. And then there were also requirements that the county government placed on the landowner to, remove certain structures, to do asbestos abatement here, and to do some work here. And each one of those things that the county required at the time necessitated an investment from the landowner. Now fast forward to 10 years later or so, and the community center is very different about cocoa palms and what should be built there. The issue being, though, is that we as a county government, earlier had required all this investment to be made by the property owner. And so now from a legal standpoint, their entitlements that were granted, 10 or 12 years ago, those are binding. And any attempt for the county to roll that back would be at a significant cost to the county itself in damages or takings, essentially, to the tunes of tens of millions of dollars. And so everybody kind of looks at the planning commission and the department like, oh, revoke those permits. Like, we can, but we will be on it will be a costly matter for the county at this point because of the way it had been set up, over a decade ago, albeit with a lot of community support. So there's no way to really roll back those permits anymore from a county standpoint without us paying, kind of very costly damages. So that it just kind of sits and exists where it is. The one remaining structure that remains to be torn down. But yeah.
That's interesting. I've never heard that take, and I've asked a lot of times questions about that. Where do we stand? Why? I've never heard that particular position, which certainly makes sense. Comes down to
I would say we have to give a bit more, nuanced responses several years ago when we questioned that because the potential for the lawsuits was so high.
Yeah.
Particularly from the landowner. So I don't know, maybe the county attorney's office is going to call me as soon as this show is done being aired and be like, kind of, what did you just say?
Okay, well.
I don't think there's anybody really, beating the drum in trying to get another resort development in a coastal area propped up. But those are kind of the apples right now.
Yeah, let's hope not. But so we're almost ending, and so we always like to ask of our guests to leave off with what is a message of hope for the people of Kauaʻi pertaining to the topics we've been talking about and the housing crisis.
I was talking about just the areas and guest houses. There are abilities for homeowners to look and relatively easily at least vet out their properties to see if they qualify. So we're here for that. Aside that, from the housing standpoint, it's dire. I don't know how much hope I can give. We're trying to make those adjustments where we are able to, but I'll be honest, you don't see the cost of construction going down anytime soon. And so I'm not sure, quite honestly, outside of, please get your ARU application or clearance forms in. By all means, give our department a call, and if we can help you walk through any of the infrastructure issues, by all means, we are here.
Well, that's very helpful. And in reality, we're all in this va'a together, and it's everyone doing little by little. I mean, we at PAL, we feel like we're doing all we can, but it's not huge. We're not solving the housing crisis, but it's Habitat for Humanity that we partner with. It's the county building rentals, and it's, and the ARUs and the ADUs. That's going to help some because it's going to branch out and offer more. So I guess it's just a matter of chipping away little by little by little and seeing progress, and hoping for the best for all of us. Thank you so much for making time. I really do appreciate it, and we'll stay in touch. Thank you so much. Mahalo nui. Aloha.
And you are listening to Kauaʻi Community Radio, Radio KKCR, Hanalei, KAQA, Kilauea, K224CQ, Aloha, and K205 FM, Honolulu, streaming worldwide at www.kkcr.org. And this permanently affordable living Hawaii radio show is made possible by KKCR sustaining members in partnership with Horses Are Good Company and Hale Lihue Second Saturdays.
Up store selling paniolo and English tack tradition.
For supporting Kauaʻi Community Radio. I want to make sure I play this one for sure.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the speaker and do not necessarily represent those of KKCR staff, board, members, volunteers, or underwriters.
All right, and we are back live in the booth. And Leigh, you're going to introduce our next guest?
Yes, I'm so pleased to have our fourth mayoral candidate, Laura Lindsay. Laura, I would love it if you would tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, great. Okay. So, my ohana hails from Ele'ele, back generations, Filipino immigrants. At some point, we moved to Oahu to work for World War II. So I was born and raised on Oahu. Got married, had my honeymoon over here on Kauaʻi, and we decided we needed to raise our kids here. We had 2 kids at the time, moved over, and 14 kids later, we're still here. They're all grown.
14 kids later. Did I hear that
kids,
right?
Correct. 14 kids. Now we have 18 grandbabies and 1 on the way. My husband and I have been together for over 40 years. Kauai's in our DNA, and we just love it here.
Well, that is impressive to be parents, grandparents, and running for mayor. Yeah, that's the first question I've got on the list is, why are you running for mayor?
I'm running for mayor because there's many issues that Kauaʻi has that we've kind of kicked down the can down the road for decades. It's a big job, and there's a lot to do, and nothing's going to be done in one term. But I believe with the right focus, we can move the needle. We can set some of the foundation stones that we need to set for the next generation. A lot of our housing issues come from lack of infrastructure, and those are the 3 main issues. So those are the foundational stones that are key for me. Our water, our waste, and our roads. I'd like to be able to drive from Kekaha to Wailua without, praying Hail Marys all the way because you don't know where the road is or not. Safety and security, prosperity, and find a way to keep our families home.
Well, thanks. And I was going to ask a follow-up, in regards to 3 priorities that you had set. I mean, is that it? Infrastructure being one of them?
Those are the biggest rocks. 3 big rocks.
Solid waste?
Yeah, absolutely. Solid waste. We need to look at it as not a one-trick pony.
Right.
We're going to need to mine the waste that we have. We're going to need to divert more. We're going to need to repurpose more. I see all the time on Facebook Marketplace, come pick it up or it's going to the dump.
Right.
That whole mindset needs to change. we can't just defer to the dump. It's not a thing.
Yeah, well, where is a way when you live on an island?
Yes. So I think that we could do way better. Well, maybe not the government alone, not nonprofits alone, and not private people alone. We have to lock arms, and we have to really come to the table and bring what we have and find a better solution, because what we've been doing, we cannot continue to do. It is not sustainable.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I mean, I think it really is a kako thing, that kind of activity. It can't be just government. We know that the private sector isn't going to do it on their own. There's got to be buy-in from community.
And now there's 5 R's, not just reduce, reuse, recycle.
That's correct.
There's 2 more.
Refuse is one of them, and to let things rot is not a bad way to go as far as how are we going to overcome the Mount Opala and Keikaha.
And a lot of it is a single use, but we're going to get to solid waste a little bit later in our.
We
have a lot of questions. We ask the other candidates too. What is something that you respect about your opponents, and key differences between you and as leaders, between you and them, the ones that you know so far?
I know all the leaders. I know them well. I've worked with them for decades. I really do love them all very much. Their hearts are good, and they do good work for Kauaʻi. Bernard is Mr. Aloha. I think he would make a tremendous ambassador for Kauaʻi. Just send him around the world, and he'd send everybody to Kauaʻi.
Right.
Mel is can be very firm, almost stubborn. But that can be good too sometimes. We deal with hard issues and can't always make popular decisions. Felicia I've worked with the human services side. She's very compassionate. Compassion is a big piece of my heart. I work now with a lot of the homeless. Sorry.
Well, share that. Your background, where you work, and why you're working with others.
I'm working presently with Catholic Charities as the island director. So we do a lot of work with homeless. Prior to that, I worked for the county for a few years in finance. And prior to that, I worked for St. Catherine's School and Church for over 3 decades. I also worked with Community Schools, KSAC, for over 20 years. So initially, seriously, my love is kids and families and education, and I've worked diligently to create opportunities for education and scholarships for our keiki, but they can't study if they don't have a home, and they can't maintain a home if they have to worry about what they're going to eat. So I'm just going back to, again, foundational stones. We need to set the stone right so that they have a place to grow and to prosper.
That's a key point, too. The food insecurity. You can't learn if you're hungry when you show up. So
yes. So going to my second stones is that food insecurity piece. Over 30% of our population is food insecure. And as I was driving down here, I'm looking at all this lush, beautiful landscape, that there is no reason in God's good earth that we do not have enough food on this island to feed our people.
Agreed.
Yeah, and we have, so many dynamics at play, and I think you mentioned it, in regards to affordability, and, there's a lot of external factors, and the next section I'm going to talk about is, at the federal level, our government right now seems to be in, a bit of a quandary.
That's a really nice way to say it.
I would say chaos.
Thank
more,
you.
But
well, we are trying to paint the picture as real as it is. I've not seen. Government shutdown right now. Congress is debating, how are we going to fund this program? How are we going to reform that program? We have midterm elections coming up. We have a chief executive officer of the United States that seems to have a number of misdirected policies that are, when you run and say you're going to bring down the cost of eggs, you're going to make groceries affordable, and now we see the rising cost of fuel because of a intervention, or as he's describing it, an excursion.
Excursion.
Yeah, we have a military excursion. How would you comment on today's kind of national, international climate, and what does protecting democracy as the chief administrator of our local government, what does that look like for you, and also in your administration? What is transparency and respect for the public service? And there's a lot to unpack there.
There's a lot to unpack. So what I've been doing, not as mayor, obviously I'm not mayor yet, is I've joined the Democratic Party. I'm the treasurer. I show up for sign waving. I educate people on what is and isn't allowed as far as immigration policies, what's legal, what's not legal. I would do the same thing for the people of Kauaʻi to give them the tools and the wisdom to know what is within their rights, but also to keep them safe, to educate our forces and our watchers to also know, because they'll have to be put basically in between the people and whatever shows up. ICE has been here before.
Right.
And, we've done the video and try to report. But I understand, because I'm the same way, that if somebody came and caused harm to anybody that I love, I would not be able to stand down.
Yeah, and it's, first responders, law enforcement, our essential workers, and a small community like ours, it would be really disruptive to see an outside agency, an outside, and I know that there's
masked people,
and there's always been the sense of cooperation amongst the different, whether it's state, county, and federal. But it does seem like there's a challenge now because of the, just say, the partisan nature of politics, especially at the federal level. And so, maybe you can speak to a little bit of how your, I would say, kind of local way, how would your leadership style, your management style, be effective in such tumultuous times?
That's a really good question. And it's not really a scenario that I think any of us had trained for. Just be pono, do the right thing. The right thing might not be the legal thing, but we have to do the right thing. I had my kids up in Mauna Kea protesting, and I said, when the officers come, son, stand down. They said, Mama, no.
And that is the times that we're living in, without a doubt, that we are, put in the position where it's going to be, in the coming days, really important that, we're firm and we're kind of righteous in our resolve.
But what's trickled down is the division that is so very apparent here, very apparent everywhere, of the division of the people, of the two so-called parties. It's something.
And I do believe it's one of the things about our local politics that's many people will talk about. It's nonpartisan. And a lot of folks are, good with that.
Not so long ago, there was a time that people from opposing parties would have differences of opinion. But at the end of the day, they could be nice to each other, speak to each other, be even friends with each other, but have differing opinions.
Civil.
Yes, and even with citizens. And now it seems it's completely not that way at all. The minute someone mentions that they have they support some, it just opens up the door to a lot of uncomfortable, almost confrontational and dismissive, and it's broken up family. It's unbelievable, really.
It really has, and it doesn't need to be.
No,
it really doesn't.
It never
need to
had
be.
been like that.
No, it really doesn't need to be. We're all in this together. Either we sink
Thank you.
or swim, we succeed or we fail. And the people that are causing the division could care less what happens to any of us here.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to just wake up a little bit and just look around and just really take the steps to repair our families, repair our communities, fix our relationships.
Yeah. There we go.
Agree to disagree.
And I was going to say that shifts nice into our next kind of section of where we were going to focus questions on, and kind of a near and dear to our hearts, housing, the permitting process. Government has a role in regards to development.
So about housing then. So, Laura, what is your plan to make housing more attainable for local families, and what is the first move that you would make in the first year?
We were having a conversation about this earlier, and I started laughing because the budgets are being done now, so I'm going to be stuck with whatever they approve when and if I'm elected. But first year,
you inherit the budget.
You inherit the budget, and you have to work with what you have. But looking at our island, we have resources. We have ohana that have land that maybe don't have adequate housing. There's funding sources available, either if they have Hawaiian ancestry through Hawaiian resources. OHA, you can get up to $100,000 to do modifications, renovations to your hale. USDA Rural Development has great programs where you can, do what you need to do single family, multifamily, whatever. But we have to, the tools are there. The information is not readily available. What I would do is create a resource so that a family or persons can come in and say, here's what I got and what can I do with this? Much like what Kaina was just saying, like there's a way to see what you can be approved of on your property, whether it be an ADU or ADR, modifications, adding a bedroom. Sometimes that's all it takes is a garage conversion or adding one more bedroom with one more bathroom, and it doesn't have to cost $1 million. And if there's a way that we can speed that through, because it's not like a whole big process, And if I wasn't the mayor, I would say just do it and then get it permitted, because how many times have we seen people just do whatever they want, get after the fact permits? Just make sure you do it the right way so that you can get permitted.
Right.
But as mayor, I would say go through my office and we'll get you hooked up and we'll connect you with the right information and the right resources. Part of my kuleana right now at Catholic Charities is people come in and they sit down and they're like, tell me your story, what's going on with you? So we find out like what they actually need, whether it's SNAP benefits or Social Security, or you need to get on the housing wait list, or you just need clothes down the street. There's things. So it's not a one size fits all, but honestly, we have resources on this island that we have not tapped into, and we're all sitting around waiting for somebody else to do it, and nobody is coming. Nobody's coming. We are it. And together we can do this. We can totally do this.
We are it.
That's right. It's very true. Nobody's coming as in developers. They want a bottom line.
They're not coming
to
help us.
No, right, exactly right. And Kaina mentioned something that is very helpful, that if you are interested, there's a pre-permitting process, which costs nothing, and you can get a good feel on exactly, it goes through all the different county agencies to find out, okay, what am I faced with before they have to start doing anything. And he even said you can hand draw your basic idea of what you want to add to your house. So it's quite user-friendly, which is very exciting, I think.
That is very exciting.
Yeah.
Because I think that's one of the strategies that's going to be so beneficial if we're able to streamline processes, if we're able to help facilitate, whether that's family that needs resources, money, they need to know about where they can get that kind of capital, who are the lenders, what kind of financial literacy programs that would be beneficial to that family. Also hooking up builders, knowing that there's family that are going to need find the local contractors that are going to be able to deliver and provide. Having those types of resources coordinated through the county with our nonprofit partners, and how that, I want to say, kind of covers a full spectrum of services.
And they are coming, actually, but they're coming to purchase land and compete with what locals can never compete with prices. So that's why PAL came up with the Hōʻike Community Land Trust, because we are trying to find and get our properties are all in the land trust, and that means that they're going to be permanently affordable. Versus if someone comes in from somewhere else, buys on market, and can sell on market price, it keeps escalating the price, and it becomes permanently unaffordable.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What is the likelihood, or what is the potential for the county and the state to kind of identify those properties that the county and state own that they could use for housing purposes?
That's a rich discussion that needs to be had for sure. It really does. But it also brings up another question about balancing needs of people, because it's USA and it's free country. People can come and purchase what they want to purchase, but it's balancing the neighborhoods, and it's sad to see big neighborhoods just completely, I don't know the word gentrified, but I mean changed. And a lot of it has to do with vacation rentals, for sure. And so on that question, how would you balance housing needs with protecting neighborhoods and community character, including the vacation rentals and enforcement thereof?
Well, there's already laws in the books for vacation rentals. There is definitely a need for more enforcement. I think as community, we need to help the enforcement side. When I was at the county, I think there was one person that was doing it, and that's not enough. So. Right. We could seriously look at that and possibly expand it. But I have been guilty of using an Airbnb when I travel, only because it's way cheaper than a hotel. I didn't even check if it was authorized or not. I don't know. Maybe we can have some kind of a check mark, like this is like a authorized Airbnb, and then encourage people to only use those. Yeah, there's got to be better. I know that there are better ways. We can enforce what we already have. There's a house behind us. I live up in Wailua Homesteads that is owned by people that live in Canada. So it's a beautiful home. They don't rent it out, thankfully, but they're only there maybe 4 or 6 weeks a year. And not at the same time. Like, they'll go 2 weeks and then be gone. And
right.
So, like, we kukua, we take care of their yard, make sure, nobody messes with their house. But maybe, I don't know, maybe places like that we could incorporate into, like, a traveling nurses program, to help that, so that they won't have to go to some other illegal thing, or, I don't know, even down my street. All the rim lots are rented out, and they're all illegal.
And that,
go ahead.
That's just an interesting thing about enforcement, because planning isn't out there, like the Google car searching for things. They're not, but they will always respond to
complaints,
issues.
Right.
Yes, but that can be a problem, because they need to associate that complaint with someone who's in their proximity, and then that creates a lot of pilikia between neighbors. And that, a lot of people say, never mind, I'm not going to touch it because it'll upset people, and we live here, so that can create a huge problem.
Yes, and local people, we don't like confrontation generally, and we just want it to be fixed. We don't want it to be a problem, but once it is a known commodity, then it's going to be a problem. So. I don't know, Facebook shame people because they're, I don't know what the answer is, because it comes down to really personal responsibility.
Yes.
And there's a lot of people that are making a lot of money doing illegal activity, and I get it. Like, everything's expensive, but we always are held to some semblance of law and order, I would think.
We're all in the same boat. It's just like recycling. When I see people putting cardboard into the into the trash, 2 very huge trash can, it hides it. I mean, it was great that they implemented that plan, which is good, but they're so big. I have a smaller one, but when it's that big, you just
can throw
let me
anything
just,
in there.
Yeah, green,
Right.
everything goes in there. But cardboard and plastic and bottle, yeah, I know.
Is that a good time to bring up the solid waste issue?
Yes, I think it is.
Because it's an issue.
Why don't we
right?
just jump into that?
Yeah, because we can get back
Go
to
for it, Jimmy.
some of the other. Maybe I should look at my schedule here. I have a message that I need to play, and it sounds like this. We're going to take a minute and a half break, just to give you folks some, if you need to get water, anything like that. And listeners, phone lines will be opening up after the 5:30 section, 826-7771. We are joined with Laura Lindsay. She is running for mayor, one of 4 that we know at least, but we hear rumors of other. So if you know of somebody who's running for office and would like to have them share their message with us here on Kauaʻi Community Radio, please give us a call, 826-7774. Leave a message, leave your contact information, and we'll get in touch with you.
Or contact PAL Hawaii, info@PAL-Hawaii, pal-hawaii.org.
Thank you. We will showcase you in our April monthly edition of Monday Mixed Plate Radio. So let me just play this message, and we'll get right back to the conversation with Laura about being the next mayor of Kauaʻi.
Local public media stations are a critical part of how communities stay informed, safe, and connected, especially in small rural communities like Kauaʻi. You have the opportunity to ensure that this vital work remains a vibrant part of Kauaʻi life. Give during the Pohalaho Fund Drive, April 3rd through 9th, and renew your commitment to your radio station, to your safety, and to your home-curated entertainment made by your friends and neighbors. We're counting on you. Head to kkcr.org and make your donation or call 808-826-7774. Mahalo for renewing your commitment to KKCR.
Hey, you thought that was on Carl? No, it was me. Holy moly, I'm on albatross. We've been raising our ohana on Kauaʻi for thousands of years. And Kauaʻi the only place where we nest so close to the peoples. In February, the babies went hatch and they stay so cute like that. Mahalo plenty Kauaʻi for one safe place for raise our keiki. This message from the Friends of Kauaʻi Wildlife Refuges. Learn more at kauairefuges.org.
Funding for this message is provided by the Kauaʻi Albatross Network.
All right, we are back live in the booth, and we are speaking with Laura Lindsay. She's running for mayor. And Laura, thank you for being a first-timer on making the campaign. We saw this was released on March 23rd. The Office of the County Clerk Elections Division announces that on March 23rd, 2026, the following individual filed nomination papers to officially become a candidate for the 2026 primary election. Candidate Laura Andaya Lindsay, office Kauaʻi County Mayor, political party nonpartisan special. So there we go.
Great.
The announcement has been made, and we welcome you here to Kauaʻi Community
so
Radio, where we like to talk trash.
Yes, we do.
And just to make it a plug, on Hōʻike Community Television, Max Richardson hosts a TV show called Talking Trash. It's a podcast about our solid waste issues. Laura, as mayor, what would you do to address our solid waste issues?
Oh, everything. Everything. Honestly, we can't just keep dumping it in the ground. First, I would strongly encourage people to just don't bring more stuff here. Just say no.
Just say no.
Just say no. Especially with all, I was at the beach and there's so much plastic trash. I'm guilty of that. I bought the kids plastic buckets every Easter and every summer, all the silly toys, but we can't do that anymore. We cannot do that anymore. So let's stop bringing it here. Second, start really being responsible for your own kuleana. I've heard that we can't afford to recycle. We can't afford not to recycle. So if we can't afford it in a pickup service, then we'll have to figure out a way to afford it in a different way. Maybe we have different gathering stations. We have to figure out a way. But to say that we can't afford it is not an option. Treating all the different kinds of waste appropriately and not throwing them all in one receptacle. The green waste in particular, it does not need to be transported from A to B to C to Kekaha. We need to purge some of the stuff that's in Kekaha because we're not going to get another landfill. They're talking about maybe expanding it across the street. We've dumped enough on the west side. The west side deserves better.
Amen.
Yeah. And if you're okay with dumping trash on the west side, I would say let's find a space in your community and see how that feels, because it's not okay. It's really just not okay. It's what we have to work with, but we need to work it through and not just keep using it as a dump site. The sites that they had spotted previously, if we can't do everything the way that they had intended, maybe we look at it and see what we actually can do, as opposed to like we can't put the whole rock in there, but we have to break this rock into pieces and figure out which pieces can do what. Construction waste is another thing. Like, why is that going in landfill? That can be repurposed. So construction needs to go in its own place. Durable goods needs to be repurposed on island. Lots of people need things. We have a very transient community. They bring stuff all the time, and then when they want to remodel or they move, they just dump it. And that is a huge piece. And we can't keep doing that. There's ways. We have the resource center near the airport. They can expand that for durable goods. We can reupholster furniture and recover beds and do all of that. There's no reason that all that needs to go in the waste. Same thing with food. Like, the food should never be in the waste. Like, we should be diverting that for compost or for animals. So we need to be more mindful about what kind of waste we create and where it actually goes.
Yeah, that key word being more mindful, because it's unconscious, the way that we just consume and we buy stuff. You mentioned it, we just buy stuff,
but
and
it's
then we
being
buy stuff
promoted.
that's packaged.
It's being promoted so strongly. A lot of things changed as a result of the big box store coming in, including people's waistlines, because suddenly they were buying giant-sized things. And fruits or different things, and all the stores are putting the little plastic container, which you cannot put in the plastic recycle. What are you doing with that? Go to the store and put things in your own bags? I mean, the retailers are, and they're still bringing plenty of styrofoam coolers. And then when people are done, it's our problem.
And they have no corporate kuleana that they assume for bringing in all this trash.
And I was just going to ask you if you're familiar with that concept called extended producer responsibility.
Oh, absolutely.
And how could we maybe at the local level, because certain stores sell certain items, and we know where they are, that we have to charge a little bit extra because they produce more waste than other locations.
So they take responsibility getting rid of it, for example?
I think that there's some creative ways that we either ask them to have a receptacle and they take back.
Have a receptacle. I mean, come on.
Be part of the solution.
Yes, and I always thought, why not have a reverse vending machine to put your cans and bottles and things? Make it easy, because you're buying crates of plastic bottles and crates. Seriously, we years ago, never bought crates of anything, really. Cans and all that.
A 6-pack was just fine.
It was fine.
You didn't need a 30-pack.
Right. Yeah, I have a bottle of water. Normally we have, containers. So, yeah, going back to the mindful piece.
Thank you.
Yeah, we just... bring our own bags, bring our own containers. I've seen some amazing stores across the mainland where they do exactly that. And you go like the old style where you scoop it out
Right.
and you fill up your own containers and you pay by the weight. I'd love to recreate that here. I would love to have food pantries throughout the island that are open like markets. Also
like food co-ops, it sounds like.
Yeah, it can be a co-op,
Yes.
and it can be like, again, a partnership. All the churches run food pantries, and they do really good work, and all the volunteers work super hard. I've seen them down at the food bank scooping up things, and they drive them over, and then they unpack them, and they set it up, and then they break it down. So we're all doing the work. We're doing really, really hard work, but we could be working collaboratively better together, and then meeting the need that we're trying to hit. We're missing the target. We have lots of arrows, and we can do this. We can coordinate better, and we can do better.
It's a little bit like tackling the housing crisis. A lot of people are doing a lot of different things, and not huge scale, but collectively it will add up eventually.
Absolutely.
And I think the same way with the solid waste, but I mean, there's got to be a lot of consciousness surrounding that.
Yeah.
And just, okay, well, who cares? I'll just stash it. I'll put it.
My son just got married. We have 6 sons and 8 daughters. We have a set of identical twins, and one of them got married in Hilo this weekend. We had to rearrange everything because the storms.
Yeah.
Oh,
my gosh.
It was insane. But everything worked out great. They're still married. But in Hilo, everybody takes their own trash to the dump. Mm-hmm. There is no receptacle. Well, they have a receptacle, but it's not like, nobody's coming to pick it up. Like, you have to take your own trash to the dump.
They don't have curbside collection.
No. And if you have to do all your own things, that's why I never buy cans. I don't want to deal with that afterwards. It's just a lot,
Yeah. So, I mean, if you look at the money and you look at the resource and you look at what the need needs to be, then maybe we rethink what we've been doing. We don't have to do what we've been doing just because it's what we've been doing.
Well, and that is the definition of insanity for some folks is, doing the same thing and doing the same thing and expecting different results. And I think that's what most folks are kind of excited about other candidates running for mayor is not the same, and hopefully getting different results.
I agree.
And I think that's what we want more, we want better, and we deserve better.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm all about improving and empowering. That's what my goals are.
Oh, thank you. That's a good thing for a leader to share as an elected official, to empower, to keep us engaged and inspired.
And responsible.
And
accountable.
I wonder, because we were talking about houselessness, homelessness, and it's an area where you're going to come in strong. You've got a background in working with the critical population, the most at risk and vulnerable.
They are, and it's growing quickly, especially seniors. Most of them have some kind of Social Security, but not enough to afford our market rents.
Sure.
So shout out to anybody out there. If you're in a house where you can rent a room or do a lock-off, I have a senior that needs a house. It could be an easy fix. You lock the door, a room with a bathroom. You can rent out your master suite. I think it's allowed under the ADU, ADR rules.
And it's long-term, no short-term.
Right, long-term.
Right.
We have a lot of seniors, mostly women, but also men. The island does not have a veteran shelter anymore because of federal cuts.
Right.
So to the veterans out there, if you have room in your home or on your land that you can help house a veteran, they're out there. We need you. The other thing that I found is with our shelter, a lot of the couples are not getting sheltered because they're single or there's family. There's not for couples. And if a space opens for a wahine, she's not going to go in because she's not going to leave him.
Right.
If the space opens for the kane, he's not going to go in because he's not going to leave her. So, again, somebody out there has space in their house where they can, rent a room, do a lock-off, do something. We can all create, between the 60 or 70,000 of us on Kauaʻi, I think we did, our last homeless count was 400-ish. We don't have the official numbers yet, but we can do this. If every parish just adopted one homeless person and tried between, all of them to make this person whole, we could do that.
Like exchange student program.
Yeah. Or just like care for your kupuna. There's, last I talked to KEO, there were 30 families on the wait list for emergency shelter. 30 families. And the reason for that is because of the way the shelter was set up, where you can join 2 rooms, but the maximum can only be 5 people or 6 people. So if you have more than 3 kids or so, then you don't fit.
Right.
You don't fit. And coming from a big family myself, I'm especially mindful that, of the sacrifice that they make, just having the kids, and then, you want to keep them safe and educated and fed. To be homeless on top of that is just beyond my imagining that's possible. So I drive by houses all the time that are empty. Like, if you out there, you have an empty house, call me and let's figure out why. Is it you can't find management? It needs some repairs. Like, let's tackle this. In a housing crisis, no house should be empty. No house should be empty.
That you're raising some really good points in regards to our existing stock. A lot of them are underutilized, and whether that was going to be put into the rotation, like you mentioned, for visiting nurses, we have a number of essential workers that could benefit from having a program that helped them get in and then get a little bit better established. I think of teachers all the time.
Lifeguards need housing too.
There we go. Lifeguards.
People that we need very much.
Firefighters and policemen. I think about how, at one point, housing was a benefit for their employees, especially here in the plantation scenario. You worked and you got housing. Maybe that's something the county could consider, is creating some housing incentives for their employees.
Yeah, the county already has a pretty good tax credit for if you give to certain populations, and that's good. But the county is just the county.
Right.
And as our community, we can't keep looking to the government to do what we can do. The government is supposed to do the government kuleana, the infrastructure, which we failed on. If we get that right, we can build more housing. A lot of the housing we can't build is because we don't have the water, or we don't have the roads. So what I would love to see is all of us at the table, and I say, okay, this is my piece of the pie, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it right. I'm going to do it quick, and I'm going to do it well. And here's what I need the rest of the community to step up and do. And all of us can do something. Everybody can do something, and we can all do more. Except for maybe the people I'm already working with at the nonprofits. You guys rock. You don't need to do anything else. Yeah, but like there was a couple this morning. One is disabled, in a wheelchair, and they came looking for food. We don't have food at Catholic Charities. We do housing. We do bus passes. We do youth programs. We do counseling. We do immigration. We have 50 programs statewide. We do all kinds of stuff, but we don't have food. I generally have some snacks like peanuts or something. So I just, asked if they had a peanut allergy. They didn't. I gave them what I had and some water. But there's no place really for even hot food on a regular. Salvation Army does a tremendous job. I think they were still looking for a chef. Anybody a chef? Call Salvation Army Lihui. They were looking for a chef.
Project Vision too on Fridays.
Right. So, but if it's today, whatever today is, Tuesday. Thank you. Tuesday morning.
Monday.
Today is Monday.
Today's Monday.
I'm pretty
even
sure.
worse.
I do radio on Tuesdays most weeks.
So today's Monday morning. It was say 9 o'clock in the morning. There wasn't a place, and to see a very, grown men weep. That doesn't happen, except it did. And it's happening every day, all the time.
Right.
I had to ask somebody to move from my doorstep the other day, and, he just wants someplace to sleep. Like, how come we can't just find someplace for them to sleep? Like, how have we come so far from our humanity that's just the thing? And he's laying there, and
you're on the front lines,
right?
Yeah, and it's hard not to feel that.
Well, especially for folks that are involved in the work, you can't not see it. It's everywhere, and we're in a position now where the collective work that is needed. I'm trying to think of the term that I've been hearing a lot. Mutual aid. Mutual aid. Amen. That we're able to, whatever it could be, because like you said, we all can do something. We all can contribute, and at different times we contribute more, we contribute less, whatever our situation might be. But we're in that position, and I think most of us want to. We just don't often know how.
It's funny because maybe a disaster is needed to remind people. I remember very clearly after Iniki. And actually, I was on the North Shore this weekend. In Haleiwa, people were giving free food, giving supplies, giving cleaning supplies, giving dog and animal feed, and, collect water, because the water is not good at the moment. It was a nightmare there, honestly. As bad as a tornado, only worse because it was rainy, muddy, and displaced. So
like a tornado blows through and you're done, but this water wasn't dissipating. It was still there. Just looking at how the rescue efforts,
muddy mess, and those folks that got displaced. And then, by the way, there were a lot of people, homeless folks living at Mokuleia. Where are they going? And even during the tsunami, I was there during that time too, on the west side, and there's encampments all along. And so the idea of come clear everybody out. So what is your comment on that? Because that is what is going on, is cleared out for the benefits of the beach is nice for visitors, but what is your take on that part of it, the homeless discussion?
In my world, there's no homeless. In my world, we find space for them. Whether it's authorized camping, anything to give them, and a lot of them work. These are not like they get treated so poorly. These are working poor people, and that's our fault. Or if I was government, I would say that's our fault. We have not.
We have failed those people.
We've failed. We have failed. It's not your fault. If you're out there, hear me. We failed. So bad.
Yeah, and it's just apparent in so many different ways. Like the housing crisis that we're in,
We've known about it for a number of years. It's been predicted on and on and on.
Right.
The last big surge of building was in the 70s, actually. There's so many homes now that are in the 70s, and they're old homes. And now all of a sudden things are happening with housing. But it is, and the other part of the houseless side of it is the stigma attached. Oh, well, you don't have a house or a place to live. You must be, a drug addict or whatever. The stigma is very awful and concerning, because these are folks that get up in the morning, find a place to bathe and send their kids to school and go to work, and, functioning people who are serving the community in a lot of ways. And it's tragic.
It is. And we're blessed with an abundance of, from material goods to, technology, food, things that we shouldn't have to squander, and people shouldn't have to go without. If we can afford to bomb countries far, far away and create, economic turmoil.
Well, a small chunk of that budget would solve our problems over here.
And then some.
Gone.
Yeah.
And then some.
In a heartbeat.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, I've seen different organizations try to start up and do different kinds of programs, but they can't sustain it. Like we had one church that was doing laundry, and they kept growing and growing, and they could not sustain that. And we can't really expect them to do that. Not alone. We have to, if somebody's doing something like that, we have to figure out a way to support it. And it's not always going to be from the government.
True that.
Yeah.
You want to jump into the water?
Yeah, but I want to let folks know at 6 o'clock, A World of Jazz with Tom will be coming at you from 6 to 8, followed by, I want to say, Rat on the Rock on our Monday night radio programming.
So the water is a deep topic, and we don't have so much time, but let's dive in.
Because you did mention water. You mentioned infrastructure.
Infrastructure.
Right, and housing. We talked last week, interviewed Umi Martin, who's running for council, and we kept coming back to housing because it's so, and infrastructure being part of that. We talked about solid waste, water. The issue with our Department of Water, they're having local meetings because we anticipate a rate increase.
Right, which is going to affect everyone across the board. It might be insignificant if you're a high earner, but if you're not, it will.
One more.
Have a big consequence.
Yeah, everything adds up. Everything adds up. So I went to a couple of the meetings. Actually, one of my sons works for the Department of Water. And our water system is kind of strange.
The Department of Water and how it's
set up, how it's structured, how it's separate from the government, how it's like semi-autonomous, and they can only operate based on the fees that they collect, so they don't have money to do all the infrastructure pieces. And then we have 9 different water systems, and there's not connected, and there's no redundancy, and it's not connected to wastewater. So
and the pipes are 150 years old.
Yeah, well, that's true everywhere, right. I think.
It's evolved over time, and it does create kind of a unique semi-government authority.
We need to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, if none of this existed, how would we do it? It would be, I believe, under the county governance, so that you can use your tax dollars to pay for what you need. You could apply for, I don't know about the federal government anymore, but at one point you could get federal infrastructure grants, which there's still some of that. How
they do, they have sought that. They mentioned in the meetings.
So that's a big piece of it, and then bonds that the county can sell if you need to raise money for that. But we can't eat the whole elephant at once because it's been so neglected for so long. So we'll have to do like a targeted, laser-focused piece and start with the biggest first piece, which generally would be like from Lihui out.
It's a massive undertaking.
It's huge.
And you mentioned wastewater, the issue of septic and the conversion. It's a state kind of mandate, but the funds to do this, they're not kicking down a lot of money. No. There's some money available, but we got a lot of people that aren't in that position to go fork over $40,000 for the conversion and hope to get half
40?
of it.
Are you kidding?
Right. Well, it's whatever the cost is.
It started at 30 a few years ago. Now it's 50. It could be 70, and by the time we get closer and closer to the deadline, it could be 90. It could be 100,000.
Yeah, and I think the state's program, it's not that they've got money that they're going to give you to do it. You've got to pay for it and then get reimbursed, and it's not a full reimbursement. Yeah, so it's a subsidy and it's an aid, but we've got aging infrastructure, we've got lacking infrastructure. So let me ask you this, because you mentioned you had some previous experience in county government, in finance. You mentioned bonds. How will your previous county experience help you? What would be some of the useful, information and skills?
I think it's just not so much from the working with the county in finance, but just in finance in general. It's cost-benefit analysis is pretty basic, but a lot of people look at it at short-term cost.
Okay.
But I'm in the last, I would say probably quarter of my life, and I'm looking forward for our next generations, and I don't want to do the cheap tricks. I want to, again, back to foundational stones, what is going to be sustainable, what is going to be impactful, what is going to be long-term and meaningful for our people on this island. And it's not sexy, it's not fun, it's going to be painful. And as a community, because we haven't done so much for so long, there's going to be pain points. But I would never go that direction unless we knew it was for the long-term good for everybody. Sometimes people are not willing to do unpopular things.
Right.
But I'm going to die. Not anytime soon, God willing. And I don't want to waste any more time here doing things that are not going to matter. So I'm determined to do what is right for all of us for the long term.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Lei, you have we're getting close to our final questions.
I guess we'll ask the last question. Time-wise. Well, we always like to end on our radio show, because we talk about very deep and very difficult topics that aren't immediate answers. And so we always like to say we'd like to end with a message of hope for our listeners and for our island. What's your message of hope for the next 4 years?
Hope is in my DNA. Again, I have grandbabies, so
that gives strong motivation.
Their favorite thing, I have a video in my phone they just sent me, is Grandma House. My wish is that everybody has a safe family space, a foundation that they can grow from, that it will feed them and love them and always welcome them. That is what Grandma House is for me and my ohana, and I want to help others create that for all of their ohanas. And I know I say this all the time, but I know we have the resources, and if we kind of just stand up and stretch a little bit, and maybe might involve some actual work, we can do this. And I'm not afraid of hard work. In fact, I rather enjoy it. Some of my favorite, hardest working things was doing our St. Catherine Carnival. I did that for 30 years. And you just live there for 2 weeks, and when you think you're tired and you still got to go, you still got to go. And then you're exhausted and you still got to go, you go. And you do it. And then now those are like my best friends in the whole world. And you have all this camaraderie and this shared everything. So let's get in there, let's sweat together, let's dig some ditches or do whatever we need to do to create the Kauaʻi that we know Kauaʻi can be. I imagine it to be a beautiful garden full of food and fauna and all the tea leaves, so I can make all the tea leaf skirts and all the beautiful pua on the side of the road, so we can make all of our lei and the clean beaches with no more plastics. that is my vision. I know we can get there. It's not going to be tomorrow, but it can be soon. It can be sooner than later. That is my hope for Kauaʻi.
Beautiful message.
Beautiful.
And we appreciate you being here. Thank you for making the drive and finding the jungle studio.
Lost, but thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, it's been a pleasure. I want to remind our listeners, too, to please go to our website, pal-hawaii.org, to learn about our programs. We have 2 rental buildings, one on the west side, 50% and below homeless people, but we're rehabbing the building. So we know that there's a wait list, but we've got to get that all in order. And all it takes is money. Could be solved in a minute. Just give
Okay, you guys out there, you have money. Send her money.
Let me at that. Budget that we have for our war. Just a little bit of it, or Homeland Security. Just a little bit of that would solve all of our problems. So we thank you, all of our listeners. Thank you for tuning in.
How would they feel about the changes of our land? Could you just imagine if they were around and saw highways on the sacred ground? How would they feel about this smart city life? Tears would come from each other's eyes as they would start to realize that our people